we've seen cases against Tesco, against Asda, against Next, against Birmingham Council. A lot of these cases, almost all of them, happened within the last 15 years. Now, 14 of those 15 years had a Conservative Prime Minister. Why on earth did your party suddenly fail to look at these incredibly distortive laws that are fundamentally, even in your view, undermining British business? Let's talk about the Equality Act. Okay. Passed back in 2010. Among many things, it enshrines the principle of equal pay for equal work. But how is this working out in practice?
Well, last August, a 6-year case concluded against the retailer Next. 3 women sued, insisting that shop floor staff, mostly women, should be paid as much as the warehouse workers, who are mostly male. Well, the retailer lost, the women won.
Well, warehouse workers and shop floor staff now must be paid precisely the same. But that's not all. Over in Birmingham, the council was effectively bankrupted by an equal pay claim brought by cleaners, complaining they weren't paid as much as bin men. Now, these are different jobs, but because of the gender balance of them, the council lost, bankrupting that council.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, costing businesses a lot of money, potentially. So is the Equality Act interfering with jobs and business? Well, should we speak to Conservative MP for the Weald of Kent, Katie Lam? Katie, thank you very much indeed. I've seen that you're interested in this topic, that's for sure. Do you think the Equality Act needs to be written? What's the problem with these types of cases?
The problem with these types of cases, as we're seeing them in practice, is equal pay for equal work sounds like a reasonable principle, but the outcomes that we're actually seeing when this law is applied are really unfair. So you mentioned the Next case. Now, in that case, 3 women, as you said, brought a case that said that the people who worked on the shop floor should be paid as much as the people who worked in the warehouse. Now, the reason that that's unfair is because the warehouse jobs were considered much less desirable, and so people had to be paid more money in order to fill those roles. And we know that specifically in this case because Next had a recruitment drive for the warehouse, specifically amongst people who worked in shops, but people didn't take them up on their offer because they preferred working in the shop. And specifically, the 3 women who brought this case, one of them said on the stand she would only have even considered going to work in the warehouse if it had paid, direct quote, a lot more money. So businesses are left not being able to fill the roles that they have because they can't pay market rates.
I mean, this is the fundamentally almost unimaginable part of it all, that people complained that they were not being paid as much as a completely different job. They were then offered, well, you can move to that job and be paid more for doing that job, and they decided they didn't want to do that job. Have we reached now a stage where we have judges and committees and bureaucrats telling businesses what they can pay different jobs in different roles? I mean, I thought equal pay was about the same job, but clearly not.
What we have here is a classic case of unintended consequences. So the Equality Act sort of doubles down on the Equal Pay Act, which was passed in 1970. But that was over half a century ago. You know, the world was very different. Society was very different. The job market was very different. It wasn't as easy if you were a woman, perhaps, to get access to the higher paid roles that men had access to. But that doesn't apply in this case. Those days are over. Any of the women who worked in one of Next's shops could have moved to go and work in the warehouse if what really mattered to them was earning more money. And they chose not to do that. And rather than respect individual choice and the needs of a company, the commercial needs of a company to pay market rates, we're now in a position where the law says that the courts can rule exactly what people are paid.
OK, so what do we do about this? Does it need a fundamental change in the legislation?
This particular bit essentially does. So the equal work for the same job is a principle that should stand in law. There's no reason not to have that. But what the Equality Act says is that equal work is not where the jobs are the same. It's not even where the jobs are broadly similar, but equal work is only where a job evaluation study, or the only real way you can tell, is where a job evaluation study rates the jobs as being worth the same. That bit that bit has to go.
I mean, it's so hard, isn't it? Because when people employ someone, for example, if you have two candidates and one has, and you have two jobs to fill, one has more experience than the other, then presumably they can ask for more pay even if they are technically doing the same job. I mean, is that illegal for someone to be paid the same as someone else, even if they've got a completely different CV, if technically they're doing the same job? I mean, surely there must be room for manoeuvre in most industries.
So you can differentiate based on experience. That then also becomes quite tricky, that you're not running into age discrimination, because obviously if you're a certain age, you can't have more experience, all of that kind of thing. So it is, and unfortunately, this thicket of laws that businesses have to negotiate in order to employ people is only going to get worse, because we've got Labour's employment bill, which is coming through, which is going to make things even tougher.
But Katie, we've seen cases.
It's impossible to make money.
We've seen cases against Tesco, against Asda, against Next, against Birmingham Council. A lot of these cases, almost all of them, happened within the last 15 years. Now, 14 of those 15 years had a Conservative Prime Minister. Why on earth did your party suddenly fail to look at these incredibly distortive laws that are fundamentally, even in your view, undermining British business?
Well, there's a couple of things. So the first 5 of those years are in coalition, and I would imagine there was no way that the Liberal Democrats would have been willing to look at this. And also, the law and the interpretation of the law and these particularly egregious cases that we've seen have happened more recently. So it's expanded over time, and often, I mentioned unintended consequences earlier, often those take quite a long time to manifest and to show themselves. But what then needs to happen is that the government needs to react and say, no, this isn't what the law should be, we need to change the law. So that does need to happen. Your question as to why it didn't happen under previous administrations is a very reasonable one. I have been a member of Parliament since last July, but the best time for it to happen, given that it didn't happen earlier, is now.
OK, well, Katie Lam, thank you very much indeed for your time, Conservative MP there. Yes, Ali Cat has got in touch. I'm not sure that's your real name, Ali Cat. I work at Sainsbury's on the shop floor, and the warehouse is far harder than the shop floor. There are lorries to unload, pallets to move, loads of cages to move, lots of machinery to handle. You have to wear high-vis steel toe caps because it's hazardous. And in the winter, it's bloody cold too. It's totally ridiculous. So I think in reality, people do realise which jobs are the less desirable ones, don't they? And therefore pay a premium, or should do.
Here's the bonkers thing. What will happen in all of these cases is that retailers will just simply outsource. I mean, they won't run their own warehouses. Because if it becomes, or they won't run their own shop floor. I mean, if they have to be paid exactly the same, it's going to make the cost of doing business so much more. I imagine they'll just end up splitting up their businesses, hiring in the services of someone else, and you'd have sort of one siloed company that can only do one job. Otherwise, a judge will come in, pointing to the Equality Act, saying you're paying different jobs differently. We can't have that.
I mean, these days people try and sue their employer for all sorts, don't they? I mean, there are so many lawyers that are just hired to find a way for you to get some money out of your employer.